Greetings. I'm High Priest Terry Riley. Welcome to the realms of Wicca. I'd like to talk to you in these segments that we're doing on this realms of Wicca. First of all, I got into the craft in 1991. I began reading all the books I could find on the market about the craft. Weren't too many back in that day. And after I read the books and all the stuff the authors were putting out at the time, I was drawn by the ornate of the magic and the flash of the rituals, and what I discovered was that the belief system about the religion of Wicca was something I already believed, already understood. And I naturally came to the conclusion that I had been a witch or a Wiccan all my life, I just didn't know it. But the history of modern Wicca is not the fluff bunny stuff that's told in a lot of the books out on the market now. The true history of the modern religion of Wicca cannot be traced any farther back than Gerald Gardner. As a matter of fact, the basis of witchcraft itself probably basically comes from Druidism. When Druidism, it became introduced into Ireland around 270 BC. And the Druids at the time were the priestly class for the Celtic people. And it propagated and went on that way for many, many, many years. Now, the process from Druidism moving into paganism, or what we will later call Wicca or witchcraft, the process of moving Druidry back to paganism was helped by the friendship between Gerald Gardner and Ross Nichols back in the 1960s. After the death of one of the leaders of the ancient order of Druids, Nichols broke away and formed his own order of Bards, Ovids, and Druids in 1964. He built the framework and discussed his ideas with Gardner and were put into practice. The change on focus from significant with many ideas predating the 18th century ritual. There are differences, however. Wicca is a spirituality of magical practice, searching for powers to make change. Druidry reaches for divine inspiration, knowing that within the Alban comes all the energy for its expression. Within the spectrum of Druidry, there is a rich splash of Wicca, and vice versa. There are a lot of tenets to the Wiccan religion. And it harm none, do thou what thou wilt. All threefold come back. None of these can be traced further back than Gardner. A lot of the pantheons that are utilized in different traditions of Wicca today come from the old practices of the European cultural times of the people. You have the Greeks, you got your Celts, you got your Egyptians, you got your Romans. All these developed different pantheons of their culture, their gods and goddesses for them to relate to. In Wicca, in the religion of Wicca, there's basically only three deities. A goddess, a god, and Supreme Spirit. That's the only three deities. Now, you can look at some of the history of some of the writers out there that said that Wicca predates and witchcraft predates back to an ancient goddess cult or an ancient goddess religion. That's malarkey. modern Wicca cannot be traced any farther back than the 1950s. Now, that does not mean that it doesn't have any validity. Just because a religion is fairly new doesn't make it any more invalid than a religion that's been practiced for 5,000 years. Truth is truth, even if you find it in an almanac. Once you have an epiphany about a spiritual path on your own, that becomes a real experience to you. And that's what the modern religion of Wicca is all about. It's not about dogma. It's not about specific traditions per se. Wicca is a spiritual practice that's based on the experience of each individual practitioner. Everybody's going to experience something a different way. If you take two people who are extremely colorblind, for example, and you stand both of them out to watch a sunrise, they're going to see and experience it different because their vision is different. But that doesn't mean the experience is not real to each one of them. It just means it's not the same experience. The same with the religion of Wicca. It is an individualized personal experience with each practitioner. Therefore, there is no set standard or way to do it. Now, let's look at the standards that's predominantly set out there among Wiccan practitioners. First of all, the word Wicca. The word Wicca, they say, comes from the Anglo-Saxon word which means wise one. I'm not so sure about that and how Wicca came in to be called witchcraft or witch. I've done a little research on that. In the old days, the Anglo-Saxon word Wicca, W-I-C-C-A, was spelt that way for male practitioners. W-I-C-C-E was for the female practitioners. Now, it's interesting to note that in a lot of the old Gaelic languages, when there was a double C in the word, it wasn't pronounced "ka." It wasn't pronounced "Wicca." The double C in Old Gaelic is pronounced "cha." So the word was pronounced way back when as "Wicca." Wicca. The wise ones were the Wicca, which over a period of years, you can see how the language has got it down from Wicca to witch. So yeah, the basic language of the word Wicca can be traced back to Wicca, which was brought into the modern pronunciation of witch. Okay. Now, I've looked at all the research too, and I don't really agree with some of the cosmologies that they put out there about modern Wicca and how it has all these ancient ties to ancient faiths and ancient culture. It might be, here's what I say. Modern Wicca today is religion of many practitioners, of many different variations of traditions, and they're all valid. I'm not saying any of them is not valid, but they're based on the practices of folk magic, which was called witchcraft 300 to 500 to 600 years ago. It has the basics of some of those practices in there. Now, modern Wicca, because Gardner was also friends with Aleister Crowley, when Gardner put out his book, Witchcraft Today, he was the first one to publicly say, "I'm a practicing witch." And he wrote down the rituals that were to be performed. Now you take casting the circle, you take calling in the 4 elements, and you take all the Wiccan tools that we utilize today, the athame, the wand, the chalice, the incense. All of these were brought over from ceremonial magic. Ceremonial magic had been utilizing those tools for thousands of years. Wicca, Gardner just adapted them and adopted them into the practice of Wicca. So most of the Wiccan practices that are done today and the covens that work today are utilizing techniques brought from ceremonial magic, brought over from druidry, and brought over from folk magic. Gardner is the grand old man of witchcraft because he's the first one that came out. And most of the circle casting and most of the rituals that are done today are basically from what Gardner wrote down in his Book of Shadows. There is another one too. Book of Shadows. Everybody today in Wicca has to have a Book of Shadows. Now, the fallacy out there is back in the old days when it was couldn't be exposed and being a witch, you'd be burned at the stake by the Inquisition or tortured or what have you. They had a secret Book of Shadows that they wrote all their spells and all their charms and all their magic in. Do you realize that most of the people 500-600 years ago were illiterate? They did not know how to read and write. Gardner was looking at a magazine article pertaining to something else, and the guy in the article used the term Book of Shadows in an art form. Gardner liked that phrase and adopted that phrase. And we still carry on the tradition today. Do I have a personal Book of Shadows? Yes, I do. Book of Shadows is another way of saying a magical journal. It's another way of saying a liturgy of spells and techniques that have worked. Okay? But to say that they're an ancient part of an ancient faith of Wicca 500-600 years ago is just not true. Now, we're going to be examining the realms of Wicca, and there's many of them out there. I am the founding high priest of the Southern Delta Church of Wicca at ATC in Lake City, Arkansas. We established the church in 1994. What we're going to be doing in the realms of Wicca is examining the different traditions, how things came into being, the truth about the faith today. And we're also going to be looking at practices, how different people practice the faith. And I'm not saying any of them are wrong. The beauty of this religion is you can say one way, I can say the other way, and we're both correct because it's an individualized experience. What is true and real to me may not be true and real to you, but that's okay because it's my religious and spiritual experience. You will have your own. That's the beauty of the faith. Therefore, we have no dogma. We have no Pope of Wicca. We have no leading authority out there because each person interprets and practices the faith and how it affects them and brings them into their own spiritual path. We have a rule at the church. In Southern Delta Church of Wicca, we have ordained licensed clergy. One of the rules we have at the church that I teach all of my clergy is when somebody comes through the door, the job of the clergy is to help that individual find their true experience to their concept of deity. Not the church's concept, not the clergy's concept, because it is an individualized experience. That means that we will minister to follow any tradition out there, to solitary practitioners, to anyone who calls upon us to help assist them in finding their true path to their own path of spirituality, whether it's in the religion of Wicca, or whether you call it paganism, whatever name you want to label on it. The true path to spiritual enlightenment is within each individual. It's not in some book. It's not in some initiation out there. Do we have initiations that honor the degree system? Yes, we do. Do we honor those? Yes, we do. Do we think they're very important? Yes, they are. We also have rites of passages for life experiences. Are they very important? Yes, they are. But it's not the whole of a religion. There is not one Wiccan tradition or one practitioner of Wicca out there that has the one and only right way to practice the faith. And that's what we're going to be examining in the realms of Wicca. So stay tuned for the next episode. I hope you like this introductory course. I'm not going to be politically correct in a lot of the things I explain out here. I may upset some people, but you know what? I'm an old man. I've been practicing this for a while. And I have a right sometimes to spit salt in the wounds. I've had my saging. Okay? So, with that being said, stay tuned to the realms of Wicca. We'll be showing you some amazing and fascinating and wonderful things. So mote it be.